Today we're going to be going into the dispute between two Colossals in maintaining harmony behind the monster world, and what the Colossals did inside of the Cataclysm. And last but not least, we're going to be going into the big theory that as Colossal Smoke series has been building up towards. What and who caused the Cataclysm? As I think today we might have solved that mystery. To begin with then, today we need to head on over to the Monstroglyphics. The Monstroglyphics are etched on the back of the Colossingum's conservatory structure, and today they're going to reveal a lot of lore that's going to help us with those theories. So let's head on over there, shall we? So the first one is Mammoth's one, and it reads, during the waning years of the dawn of fire, two Colossals were troubled, worrying that peace and stability in the monster world couldn't last forever. While both believed that the best way to prepare for the future was to strengthen the musical abilities of the singing monsters, they disagreed on how to best go about it. This confirms again that the Colossals knew that the instability was going to come inside of the final years of the Golden Era, and harkening back to that Colossals prophecy, the Colossals were always destined to imbue themselves, and this was common knowledge. So these two Colossals trying to figure out the best way to go about the upcoming events is quite interesting. The main takeaway though, to take away from this pillar, is the very end of it. It seems to suggest here that Monsters' music is seen as the greatest power against the destructive force. And I think this, guys, is something that we've got to pay particular attention towards, as seen as that the Colossals are going to be coming in game, this could help us perhaps figure out how that might happen. Moving on to his Furcon pillar, it states, one Colossal contended that individual training conducted in a special environment and focused on honing each monster's unique craft was the answer. It found a deserted landmass and imbued it with its life force to create the Colossingum, where monsters could empower themselves to become better performers in the conservatory. Taking the Colossingum out of this and the Colossal off putting themselves on this track towards combat and going down that route, going back to the order behind the pillars themselves, this confirms that the Colossingum Colossal was different towards the other Colossals. Unlike the rest of them, the Colossingum Colossal chose to imbue itself before they had to. The rest of the Colossals, they didn't have a choice in the matter. It was literally a case of, you need to save the monsters from the Cataclysm. You must imbue yourself. But this Colossingum Colossal though, this spirit decided, you know what, I'm gonna head into this island because they foresaw the events that were gonna happen. And therefore I think it brings up quite a few questions for the Colossingum Colossal. I'm very curious towards whether the same effects were encountered for the Colossingum Colossal. Seeing as though the Colossingum one chose to imbue itself, it might have not had the same effects as what the other ones did towards when the Cataclysm did occur and their singing abilities being forgotten by themselves. And it's quite likely here too, considering the Colossal's prophecy, that the Colossingum one might have took this up in hand and noticed, you know what, rather than waiting for this fate to happen, I'm just going to accept it and imbue myself and try and save the balance of the monster world in the meantime by trying this new combat style to try and see if it worked out, which unfortunately it didn't quite, seeing as though the Cataclysm didn't end up happening anyway. But it was an interesting take to see how the Colossals were trying to prevent it in the first place. The next one doesn't quite reveal a lot, and it's very mysterious. It states, this was later revealed to have been a timely decision, as it was not long after that well, I'm assuming it says anyway, because the rest of it just says inscription missing for the rest of it, and then it says damage was done, splintering the continent into many pieces and signaling the end of the dawn of fire. We're assuming that that's damage too, as I don't see what else that would have been. But the inscription being missing here is obviously hinting towards the wonderful greatness behind the mystery of the Cataclysm and them not revealing it. Anyway, moving on to the next one, it then goes, the other Colossal, inspired by the actions of their friend, chose another landmass to shift their power into, taking along a piece of the amber containing an important figure to act as the island centerpiece, which of course, as it's hinting to on the middle of this pedestal, is tribal Island Kayna. There it created a prophecy that foretold of a time when monsters singing together and being united in song would help to restore the balance in the monster world. This pillar has a smack dozen full of lore inside of it. Let's break this down bit by bit, shall we? First of all, to take away from this, you have the tribal Island Colossal rushing to save the monsters alike to the rest of the Colossals. This one, yes, it was in the background of its head thinking about other different ways that it could help restore the balance, as it ended up coming up with the ideas of tribes for monsters rather than them just singing on an island like the rest of the Colossals did. Just like the Colossingum, it attempted to bring harmony through other means. This time time through a tribe, as we've mentioned. But going back here again, it mentions Tribal Island Kayna, and the fact that this colossal spirit took Tribal Island Kayna and is the reason why Kayna is found on Tribal Island. So it wasn't anything else, it was actually a colossal spirit that took Tribal Island Kayna when it was encased in amber and placed it on Tribal Island. Therefore, we have the Tribal Island colossal spirit to thank for saving Tribal Island Kayna. And the second prophecy that we mentioned in episode 2 is finally here, and we can chat about it. So this prophecy is that monsters singing together will help to restore balance inside of the monster world. And this prophecy, as we've mentioned, is the one that it was on about in restoring Tribal Island in the first place. The fact that the monsters sung and musical balance was beginning to be restored inside of the monster world, that's the reason why Tribal Island emerged in the first place, as discussed on episode 2. So finally getting to talk about that prophecy feels really good to me. But the balance inside of the monster world, let's zoom into that word for a moment here. The balance, as it's talking about here, is in terms of music, and therefore I think, harkening back to the Golden Era, this is a new kind of balance. This isn't balance that is maintained through teleportation energy. This is in fact balance that is reliant on music. And I think this prophecy that was being foretold here was definitely something that the Colossals likely were aware of, and could have been one of the reasons why they chose to imbue themselves in the first place, aligning with the Colossals prophecy. So the balance could be the thing that allows the Colossals to come back. Certainly something for us to keep in the back of our minds for us upcoming Colossals updates. But going back again to the very beginning of this pillar, what does it say? It says a piece of the amber. Now we know all about Tribal Island Kayna, but a piece of the amber seems to suggest that there was multiple amber columns around Tribal Island Kayna. So wherever Kayna was first emplaced before being took to Tribal Island, there was multiple amber segments that were placed around different things where Kayna was. So Tribal Island Kayna wasn't alone when they were first put in amber. There were others who were affected by the binding magic of the trees. But if it wasn't just Tribal Island Kayna the Force tried to make forget the memories, who else did the Force try and contend with to make literally everyone forget about what had happened? Well, if we go on back to his first episode, we went over how the Colossals were the ones who caused the Cataclysm in the first place, as when their singing abilities were taken away, that was the reasoning behind what caused the Cataclysm. That's what it's always been described as. So if the Colossal singing abilities were somehow taken from them in the form that they forgot how to sing, we've got to go back to the key word here, they, the gods. And seen as though Tribal Island Kayna was not alone with these amber segments that were put around them, and amber is the very thing that makes monsters forget in the first place all of the memories. If we put 2 and 2 together here, it's likely that the Colossals were placed in amber wherever Kayna was, and this is what made them forget how to sing. The amber is likely also what made the Colossals forget how to disimbue themselves from the islands as we see in present day. All of the Colossals' memories must have been taken away, and this could be the reason why they are still in their very deep states of slumber, as they don't know how to disimbue themselves. Anyway though, if the Colossals were placed in amber with Tribal Island Kayna, we've got to go back to where the amber came from, which of course is our wonderful world tree. But going back to that, we've got to question where the access point was. We've been over that quite a lot on his last episode, but it must have been somewhere alike to the living core again. But I actually want to harken back to that for a moment now, because it's never been confirmed if anything else besides the Colossals are able to harness the power of the world tree. And if amber in the first place comes from the world tree, it's got to be by someone who can access the world tree. And if the Colossals are the only ones who can, what if it was one of the Colossals that caused the amber to be placed around them in the first place? So it could have been a colossal spirit that caused all of the events that we are seeing unfold inside of the Cataclysm. If we go back to the events behind the Cataclysm itself, there was also a very key factor that we've been over that happened inside of the waning years of the Golden Era. As the Golden Era was beginning to conclude, the teleportation energy also began to dwindle down over a long period of time. And going back to his wonderful amber, what does that also happen to do? It also happens to take away your memories over a long period of time. Going back to these two things, it appears as though they might very well be linked together, as these two things happening over a long period of time at the exact same time as one another ain't a coincidence. As when that amber must have been placed around them, that must have been the very point when the teleportation energy began to go haywire, as the amber must have been seen as a side effect of that. So if the teleportation energy is linked towards the Colossals, how is it linked towards them? If the Colossals also are the only ones who have the dimensional powers and the ability to go into all of the different dimensions that we've been over inside of the Golden Era, and no one else had that power, then the Colossals must have been very well linked to it again. But if the Colossals have this teleportation power, what if the teleportation energy wasn't just free roaming, but this teleportation energy in fact arose from the Colossals themselves? Nowhere is it stated where this teleportation energy came from. This teleportation energy was likely a result of the Colossals. So as the Colossals began to forget how to sing, it's likely that they also forgot how to maintain all of the teleportation energy and all of the mechanisms inside of the Golden Era that they were operating on. It's been confirmed that they created the breeding structure and the nursery, so in that case, why wouldn't it be the case too that they are the very beings empowering the structures that they have created? It wasn't the Colossals' choice to forget how to maintain these things, it was in fact the amber surrounding them. As the Colossals were forgetting how to sing, they were forgetting how to maintain their daily tasks, and therefore when the Colossals eventually did forget how to sing and also how to maintain the monster world, as the memories must have been completely wiped like Tribal Island Kayna, it was the case that the Cataclysm happened, as they couldn't maintain that power anymore. They didn't know how to. So as they were trying to, they must have accidentally caused the Cataclysm and had to imbue themselves into the islands to save the monsters. And that, my friends, is why the teleportation energy went haywire. That is the thing that likely caused the Cataclysm. But if it was caused by an evil Colossal, why would they have done it? Why would they have caused the Cataclysm and have caused this dimensional instability? Well, as we've been over, the only logical thing that arose out of the Cataclysm was in fact that dimensional accessibility became open across the monster world, and everyone could therefore access the different dimensions. So the only reason that the Colossal could have wanted to have caused all of this is for that dimensional inaccessibility to happen in the first place. So that's got to have been the reason why. But if the Colossals already have the ability to go into all of these different dimensions, there's only two options that I see available from this, and it's these two. Number one, the evil Colossal didn't have dimensional powers like the other Colossals and wanted to get somewhere, or number two, they just had an evil nature. There's no way around it, but it must have been one of these two things. I think there's also likely going to be other things that you guys suggest inside of the comments, so I'm quite excited to see you guys' suggestions. The Colossingum and Tribal Island Colossals too must have became suspicious of the evil Colossal spirit, and therefore have begun plotting all of the different ways that they could maintain the balance of the monster world without the Colossals as input. They likely became suspicious from the evil Colossals' activity. Maybe they saw the evil Colossal repeatedly putting the amber around the Colossals to make them forget, but they must have foresaw the events in some way. So the ultimate plan of the evil Colossal must have been to encase all of the Colossals inside of amber to make all of the memories go and to make them forget how to sing, allowing dimensional accessibility for everyone, and to also make sure that anyone who saw the events like Tribal Island Kayna ended up in amber, to ensure that they wouldn't reveal the secret towards anyone. Tribal Island Kayna confirms that the evil Colossal is still out there. This Colossal, unlike the rest of them, could still be disimbued, as this one is still active out there. It's still in place in the amber around Tribal Island Kayna. So this destructive force, guys, it's still out there. This devious scoundrel that we have been building up towards and created a whole series behind is still out there. And to that, all I have to say is go away. Leave Tribal Island Kayna alone. But Anyway, guys, that is the very reason I do believe behind the cause of the Cataclysm. And to go back to our nice Colossals, away from the evil Colossal for a moment here, we have the wonderful designs made by Riles. First up, we have Sinkin. I'm going to be displaying the references inside of the names on screen too alongside these, as Riles has come up with some really good names that harken back towards the lore. I absolutely adore these. Anyway, Sinkin has a lovely tiki mask, typical vibes behind it, seen as though the tribal island Colossal is very laid back and very loving, seen as though they want all of these tribes and harmony behind the monster world and everything. You can picture them as being a very kind and courteous, patient kind of Colossal character, so therefore that's been depicted inside of their very cute design with their necklace and wonderful feathers that Riles has put on here. Next up, we have Amphior, which references towards the jukebox at the very center of it and has a huge muscular figure, seen as though it's very combative, this Colossal. It's also referencing the structure of the Colossingum itself, its face and its mask rather, which I absolutely adore. And I've got to say too, congratulations to anyone who might have figured out it was a Colossal beforehand. I saw quite a few comments with people suggesting, you know what, it might be a Colossal, and I was sat there like, you guys don't know what I'm building up towards, but you have hit right on the nail. I was shocked to see so many people getting ahead of me, but it was so much fun. Let me know what theories you have down below, as this Colossal's Cataclysm mystery is still a very open one, and I am interested to hear your thoughts, specifically as well behind why the evil Colossal might have done what they did. I think that's still a very blank spot that we didn't quite manage to fully grasp inside of this series, but I think we have potentially made leaps and bounds towards what could have caused the Cataclysm in the first place. Anyway though, guys, please do make sure to leave a like down below if you enjoyed, and to subscribe too, guys. Keep your theory brains going, but for now, bye guys.